You're listening to Hockey Talk on the Rock
All right, stop.
with Laura and Keith.
It's interesting.
So let's back up a second.
He played absolutely out of his mind.
It made no sense to me.
And now,
Okay, well,
here are
let's,
your hosts.
Let's get going. Episode 18. Welcome back. Hockey Talk on the Rock. Laura over there. I'm Keith. Today is, I feel like we should mention the date once in a while. It's Friday, February, what is it, 12th?
It is the 12th.
12th of February, 2021, and we are on location at our respective homes on Salt Spring Island. I also wanted to mention that because I realized that some people might not pick up on the Hockey Talk on the Rock as being on Salt Spring Island or on an island, and they might take it as a literal we're talking hockey while smoking crack kind of thing. So, wanted to clarify that we're coming from Salt Spring Island. We're on the Rock.
Yeah,
Not doing the Rock.
that sounds like a good clarification.
Well, I don't know if we've done it before, so wanted to throw it out there.
Although
And-
sometimes I wish that I was on the rock when I am watching the Canucks these days.
I was just going to say that for episode 18 here, we had 3 games since last time we talked last Friday, and Laura,
Is
take it
only
away.
3? God, it feels like more than that in terms of depressingness. Yeah, like, I have a lot of thoughts on the Canucks right now, and none of them are good. I mean, okay, I'll say the one thing that I think is positive still about this team is that I think despite the fact that they have looked terrible and have basically played horrible, team defense, I'm going to say, is the general problem for this entire season. But when you look at the pieces of their core, you still have Pettersson, you still have Horvat, you still have Hughes. To a degree, you have Schmidt, who hasn't played well since joining the Canucks, but I think is going to turn it around. I don't think he'll be the level that he's been since coming to Vancouver the whole time he's been here. And you have some decent forwards up front, like whether or not they hang on to Besser long term, who knows? But you have Hoglander, you have Podkolzin, you have all these pieces that you've acquired through the draft that I think are going to be good NHL players. And maybe like the one thing that they really desperately need in the future is another top 4 D-man. And the nice thing is that it looks like this draft coming up, the top of it is going to be pretty heavy on the top D-men. So if the Canucks just completely bottom out here, which it looks like they're doing, maybe in the long run, it's not the worst thing. But
Okay.
that being said, I think we all know that there needs to be a change in management. Although what I'm going to say is that I don't think it's all management's fault necessarily, and I'm going to get into that in a second. Because, again, it's been a long week, and I've had a lot of thoughts. But I guess if you look back to 2014 when Benning came in, and there was that whole, to be like kind of debacle about how we're not going through a rebuild, we're going through a retool. And I think that at that point in time, it would have been the smartest thing possible for the Canucks to go into a total rebuild. And we all kind of knew that back then, right? We had an aging core, we had the Twins. It was like, we want to keep competitive for them. But in general, we knew that the chance of winning a cup was over with that group and really should have gone into a full rebuild. And that is where I think, again, you think back to the problem of being ownership. And ownership never wanted to do a rebuild with this team, and they should have. The Canucks sucked for a long time. And if they had gone through the period of letting go of pieces and getting assets back, we would be in a different situation than we are today. I think back, like, in terms of Benning's mistakes in general, like, we think about the contracts, but you also think about the fact, you have the Dan Hamhuis Verbata trade deadline where he just didn't get anything for those players. You can look back to last season where, I think we all agreed that letting Markstrom go was the right call. I still stand by that. I think letting Tanev go was the right call. Still stand by that. But last year, like, if you flash forward or flash backward a year ago at this time, the Canucks were kind of entering a tailspin. I remember distinctly how poorly they played after Markstrom got hurt, and it looked like they weren't going to make the playoffs. And again, maybe they could have moved Tanev at the deadline, which at that point would have looked really stupid. I get that, but maybe it would have been smarter in the long run. And then COVID happens and the playoffs happen, and it was really fun, and the Canucks looked really good and really exciting. But again, you wonder how much of that is, they played like Minnesota, who they were better than, and I think everyone knows that. They played St. Louis, who probably wasn't super interested in being in the bubble, and then they basically got shown up by Vegas, except Thatcher Demko played really good. But it's really hard to evaluate where this team is at. And just moving forward, Jim Benning has been the Canucks' second longest running GM. He's had 7 years. Pat Quinn is the only GM that's been around longer than Benning, and I don't know why that is. So we really need a change. It sounds like we're going to get one. All indications are saying that, but I just don't understand how long we have to wait. Anyway, that's my rant.
That's a good rant. I'm going to try and pick up some pieces that I tried to store in my head along the way. Starting with team defense. I want to say that I think I gave Nate Schmidt a little more slack than you do. I think he's actually played pretty well considering he's coming into a new team, a new system, and they've had like 5 team practices. I think he's been probably one of their better defensively.
He has been. I agree with that there. But again, I don't think that on this team that's necessarily that good a thing. And I actually think that last game, even though he had that goal go in off of him, I think that was his best game as a Canuck.
Yeah, no, he's playing well. And another one that I think I would throw out there too is I think Hamannik's presence has been played down. Yeah. I mean, he didn't look great either, but same thing. He's coming into a new team, and he was on the PTO or whatever, so he came in late. True. And same thing, no practices. So I think he would fill more of that player role that Tanev played, minus the mentorship. For sure. And the relationship or whatever. And I think he would actually have made a bigger difference. So it's kind of just an unfortunate thing, because I was trying to watch the defense a little bit more. Like, Jordy Ben is good and bad. I think it's probably fine that his contract's going to end and he'll move on, hopefully. Yeah. Tyler Myers is awful. And there's games where Alex Edler looks tired and slow, and there's games where he looks like last night, I thought Edler played maybe one of the better games I've seen him play this season.
I agree. He looked like he was moving his legs and was interested in playing. The one thing I'll say about Tyler Myers is last game when he was coming back on the back check, I think it was against Gaudreau, and he poke checked him. That was like the nicest play I've seen Myers do in his entire career. Definitely with the Canucks, but maybe all time. And then really kind of jumping off the Tyler Myers thing, I think that again is really good example of just kind of Benning outlasting his stay, because everyone in Vancouver knew that contract was bad before it was done. When they were reporting that Myers and the Canucks were probably going to do a deal, everyone was like, no, please don't make it long term, and please don't give him big money. And then they did both.
So what was the deal? 5 years, $7 million?
It was 6 by 6.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. That's disappointing. For some reason, I thought they had him for 5 years, so I was a little happier, but no, I'm disappointed.
He's still 4 more years after this year of Tyler Myers. And again, maybe if Tyler Myers is your 4th defenseman, it's okay, or 5th. But I mean, the money is up there for 4 or 5, right? But right now, he basically is having to play as their 3rd.
Right.
And I think Ben has been better this season, which I don't think you can say about many Canucks this year. But for, again, being a depth guy, he's fine for that role, but you're just having to play him too much.
Right. Yeah. And, yeah, okay. Olli Juolevi looked good last night, I thought, too.
That was his best game, I agree, by far. I think he had moments there where he looked really good and was making, some smart plays, especially defensively, which, again, for the Canucks is a big thing.
Yeah.
But I think, you wonder how much of it is there's something going on in the locker room, because, and they talked about this a bit on the radio, in a normal season, you'd have more access to being to the locker room, and probably there'd be more stories coming out about what's going on in there. But because this year everything is on Zoom and so kind of separate, maybe we're not getting the full story. But there's just so many signs, like JT Miller just looks so pissed off and so frustrated, and every play he makes right now looks so forced. And again, he's getting points. So it's not offensively. It's just like blindly passing the puck and plays that he wasn't making last year, and it's just so weird to see that big of a flip with him. And then it just kind of shows the whole team is just so frustrated. And like I said, 5 minutes into the game last night, they're playing great, but if they don't score the first goal, they're going to lose. And you just know that they don't, and again, they did tie the game, but you know that they just don't have any pushback.
Yeah.
And
So my final note on the D is, like, hindsight's obviously 2020, but now that time has moved on, I think I would be in favor of them giving Tanev the deal and not trading for Schmidt at this point. Not
Really?
because I think Tanev's a better player, but because obviously his role
presence. Yeah.
was huge. Maybe it was only just with Hughes, or maybe it was just a locker room thing, but obviously it was enough of something that I feel like I've noticed it enough,
Yeah, again, I don't know. I personally, if you're looking, like, if they were gonna trade like Schmidt for Tanev, to me, I would rather have Schmidt on my team than Tanev.
Oh, me too. And if we're like doing a fantasy draft or whatever, I would take
Yeah.
Schmidt over Tanev 10 times. What I'm saying is, I would only do that deal now
Right.
for
Knowing
the
the locker.
role that Tanev played off the ice, and
Yeah.
not comparing them on the ice.
And I think too, like, again, it just comes back to the cap, right? There's a way that you could have easily had both of those players. And like, I know everyone goes on about Toffoli, and like, Toffoli's a good player, but he has 8 of his 9 goals against the Canucks, right? Like, he scored 1 goal against a team not named the Canucks. And I think if the Canucks had signed him, they probably would have been getting closer to that production than the 8 goals against Vancouver. Now, he fit really nice in that top 6, and I did really like him. And it hurts because, again, that deal is very team friendly.
Right.
But when you mismanage your cap or cap allocation, or however you want to look at it, you're not going to be able to get these players that you need. And again, I think that comes back to when you don't let a team rebuild, when you don't offer these free agents all this money, what do you expect?
Okay, so yeah, that's the next thing I wanted to pick up on from your original rant, was that going back to how long Benning's been here, and I'll put half of it on ownership and half of it on him. And here's why, is because I think when he got the job, the Aquilinis were still not that far removed from having the taste of almost, getting to the top of the mountain there. So I think they told him the retool thing. I think they had that influence, like, we're not going to do the full rebuild. And even with the Ham Hughes for bad thing, I would more chalk that up to his inexperience at that time.
Sure.
That was his first, I think was it his first trade deadline?
It might have
It
been.
was early on. It was one of his first 2 years, regardless. And so the reason I think that is because I think you can see that he obviously grew and learned and developed a little bit, because he did move Hansen and Edler either the year after or 2 years after. So, I mean, I think that just was an inexperienced thing that when you look back on, you can maybe see, but at the time you didn't understand or whatever. And not you, I mean the general crowd. So I think that's what happened at the beginning. And then when they finally were going to do the rebuild, that's when I start to move my blame from ownership over to Benning, is because I think he had an idea of how he wanted to do his rebuild, and he didn't. Maybe it was the way it went in Boston or something, but he didn't think his guys were going to come along as quick as the Pettersson and the Hugheses did.
Sure.
And so I think he was buying himself, he thought, time, which just shows he did a shitty job, because he didn't account for, what if I make good picks? It's almost like he didn't believe in, the ability to get players from the draft to the lineup immediately, and he's supposed to be a smart draft guy. So it's kind of a weird thought, really. But I think that's why he did the things like the Beagles and the Russells at the time for 4 years, because he said, well, by time my guys I draft are ready, these guys will be on the last year of the deal or whatever, and it ended up being a couple of years earlier.
Yeah.
So I understand it, but it's still his fault. Like, I'm still pissed off about it because it could have been done differently with better foresight.
Yeah. And kind of building off of that point, I guess, I was thinking about this week. It's really interesting how, you look back to Mike Gillis, and I'm not going to get into him for GM, don't worry, but he was a terrible drafter, although I will say he didn't have those same opportunities to make decent picks. Like, he didn't get a whole bunch of early first round draft picks or like Benning has, but he didn't do well on the draft table. There's no lying about that. But he did well at trading and manipulating the cap. And then kind of once he left the team, and again, when Benning inherited this team, there wasn't much in the way of prospects, right? Their cupboards were empty, and he's done a good job of not refueling the draft picks because now they're all in the lineup, but he did a good job of drafting to get players into the NHL. But he was the opposite, right? Like, he was not terrible. I think some of his trades have worked out, but the contract thing is where he's really bad. And it is interesting how someone can be good at evaluating, minor talent, but they can't do it with professional players.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just like the Canucks have gone from one person that was incompetent at drafting to one person or team, because again, I don't think it was totally all Benning that was really good. And it would be nice to have something somewhat maybe in the middle.
Yeah, so I'll mention quickly, that's why I have the, as you said, Flow Rider jersey on, and it's actually a Bobby Lou.
Yeah.
It's because he's in the news. He got named as an assistant GM and goaltending scout for Team Canada for the Olympics in 2022.
Yeah.
And now, of course, that there's the chatter that Benning might go in Vancouver. They're talking about could Luongo fill that role down the road or even come in earlier as an assistant GM for the Canucks. And I'll let you run with that thought quickly before we move on to the Pittsburgh GM situation.
Okay, I mean, there's a part of me that really likes it because I'm very fond of Bobby Lou. He is my all-time favorite Canucks goalie, as I'm sure he is for a lot of people around my age. And he is a great personality. And he might do well, but if they do bring him in that role, then you really have to have someone come in with him as president who can help him, who knows, like, the business side of the game. And I know there's Jeff Merrick proposed they bring back Lawrence Gilman and pair him with Luongo, which I think Canucks fans would really like, but I don't think Gilman will come back and work for the Aquilinis because he's really bad terms with them.
Okay.
So,
I don't see Bobby Lou leaving Florida.
I agree. I think
he's already working in the organization, and if he's going to move into an assistant general manager or general manager role anywhere, I think he's going to want to be there.
Yeah. There's also the chatter of bringing in Burrows as a coach. No, obviously not as a head coach to begin, but that's kind of picked up some steam in the recent weeks. And again, it's a nice sentiment, I guess, to that era of Canucks hockey, but we had again, and you can go back to Trevor Linden and the whole part of him leaving the team. But we had kind of that experiment with Linden and it didn't totally work. And I like it as a fan. There's a part of me that really likes the idea of bringing back these old players. But there's another part of me that's like, no, I want to remember these guys for what they did on the ice and why I like them so much. And I don't want to have reasons to not like them.
Yeah, I mean, I think Linden, they didn't give him enough time to develop into it, what he could have been, because it was,
Well, Linden wanted to do a full rebuild, right?
What's that?
Linden wanted to do a full rebuild. That was
well, that's what I was going to say. The owners gave support to the people that he was the boss of, right? So the writing was on the wall. So they didn't. he didn't accomplish what he wanted to accomplish, you know, and it took, for example, Joe Sakic a long time in Colorado
Oh yeah.
before he started pulling off the crazy shit that he's been pulling off to really turn that team around, as well as, you know, getting some good draft picks along the way.
Yep.
But
And I'm actually sorry. I'm glad you brought up Colorado because I have a point with them. And if you look at that team, you know, really since the I guess since the 2010s, when was Duchesne drafted? 09? Somewhere around there.
somewhere around there.
So, like, Colorado was bad for a long time. And they had that kind of one generation rebuild that didn't work out with Duchesne and O'Reilly and all those guys. And then they had to tear it down and go again with Landeskog and McKinnon and Rantanen. And now it's working. And I think the fear that I have as a Canucks fan is that that's what's going to happen with this team. And
Okay.
you'll have this first generation. I think obviously Pettersson and Hughes are going to be on the Canucks. I don't think they're going to get moved unless they don't want to stay or something, but I think they're long term. But everyone else around them, I could see getting moved out.
Even the captain.
I like, obviously right now I'd say no, but if it keeps going for a couple of years of them underachieving, even another year after this one, right? Like, and actually that brings me to another point about Bo. I'm a big Bo Horvat fan, and I understand it must be hard to be a captain of an NHL team right now because of like all the restrictions, and you're not able to have, you know, team dinners or team bonding experiences and all that stuff. But I am starting to maybe question him as captain, which I didn't think I would do. But there's something amiss, like with the locker room, but then also with the leadership of this team. And I think it goes back to how much, again, Tanev and Markstrom meant to those other players. And this current group of leadership isn't getting that, or isn't able to give that same support to these other players. And there's something wrong there.
Right.
So I don't know. Again, the Canucks, there's just something that stinks about them. Besides their play, there's something off.
Agreed. I totally agree. It's on paper, they're much better than how they play.
I might have one more Canucks point, and then I swear we can move on.
Okay.
But this is a kind of a positive, and we might have talked about this before, but the Canucks are in kind of a unique position, again, for whoever their manager is next year, because we don't have to protect Quinn Hughes at the Seattle expansion draft. And we have 3 spots for defensemen to protect. So I'm assuming, right, you protect Schmidt, I guess you protect Myers, or you will levy whoever you choose in that second spot. But you have a third open spot. And now a lot of teams have top 4 defensemen that they like. So the Canucks might be in a unique situation where they could try to trade for one of those top 4 defensemen from a team that would lose them to Seattle for nothing.
Yeah, we'll see. Could happen.
Yeah, I think, like, again, if you're smart about it and you can make those moves, like, again, I think the Schmidt move was smart. Vegas needed to get rid of him. There's going to be teams that don't want to lose these top 4 guys for nothing, and you might be able to get them at a discounted price, which, again, I think long-term would really benefit the Canucks. So that was kind of my last point about them moving forward.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about the expansion draft. And, you know, going to Seattle also kind of ties into what I want to move into with the Pittsburgh stuff. Is before Hextall got hired as the GM in Pittsburgh, I read that he was offered the assistant GM role in Seattle to work with Ron Francis, and he turned it down because he was betting on himself to be able to get a GM job again. And so I thought that was kind of interesting and kind of ballsy, but it kind of also says this is a Ron Hextall thing to do. So yeah, no, I was happy for Hextall to get another job, because I thought for my Flyers he did a very good job of restocking prospects, both through college free agency and through the draft, and building around the core he already had. I wasn't disappointed really when he got fired because I was with owners, but I felt with the core they had, the older core, that they could probably bring in a few pieces. I think I probably mentioned to you before how they obviously needed a couple D-men at the time and somebody in net besides Brian Elliott, but he didn't do anything about the goaltending. He didn't do anything about the defense, and it cost him his job. And then Fletcher, I thought, has done a pretty good job since then. But I think Hextall has a game plan for Pittsburgh, and it'll be interesting to see how he does. And I'm happy to see Brian Burke back in the league too.
I'm happy for Berkey. I'm reading his book right now, so I feel like I'm getting some insight into him as a person, and I think it's nice that he got another job in hockey because he obviously loves it, and that's going to be a tough job. I still think they're just, again, that's a situation where that team has been good for so long, they don't have any prospects, and it is a very smart move that you were able to get Hextall. First of all, that he was able to get a job, but that they convinced him or guessed that it was worth it to work with this group and that he will be able to restock those cupboards for Pittsburgh.
I'm betting, depending on how this season goes, that he'll end up trading at least one of Malkin and Letang.
Yeah, it's got to happen, right? I mean, I don't know where Pittsburgh is in the standings right now. It's really hard for me to pay attention to the non-Canadian division. I'm actively trying to watch games that are not Canadian team games because I'm like, okay, I gotta stay in the loop somehow. I know that they didn't have a great start, and that division is very tough, as we've mentioned before, but it should be good. I think that's a smart move, and again, like if you think about getting kind of hockey people of that stature to come into that situation, there's got to be some management potential that would be pretty happy to walk into the Canucks situation. Just saying. But yeah, like again, I think it's a smart move for Pittsburgh, and I wonder if there's going to be some cross state trading. If Hextall is going to try and get anyone from Philly that he drafted that he really likes.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. I predict that he's going to probably not do too much this year, depending on how they do, right? If they do really well from here on out, he'll probably try to add a piece for the run or something. Or if they tank out, then I can see long-term them just really keeping Crosby because he's got 4 years left on his deal after this one.
Yeah.
And Malkin and Letang only got the one. So I can really just and obviously it's going to be up to him a little bit too, because they do admit that the star players have say in things once in a while. And maybe he doesn't want to stick around for the rebuild. I kind of see him as a player that will probably want to play his whole career in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
But you never know. People are born champions and want to win, and maybe there's an opportunity to move, and he would say, no, you can benefit from the return and move me somewhere I can win.
The thing about Crosby too, right, is like his cap hit is pretty movable. It's like 8.7, right? Which right now it's not like McDavid moving or something where there's no one who could take his money. I'm sure they could move like Crosby if he really wanted to, and obviously get assets back. But I agree. I think he probably stays in Pittsburgh for his career. But I wouldn't mind seeing him go somewhere and having a chance to win another Stanley Cup. Obviously, as a not Pittsburgh Penguin fan, I can say that. But I'm just kind of going through my list. And the next thing I have is the changes that are going to come to the draft lottery. So it looks like they are going to put in, first of all, some sort of rule where you can't, if you get into the top 3 1 year, you're not going to be able to get into the top 3 the next year, which I think has long been overdue for the NHL.
Long overdue.
And it also sounds like there's going to be less, like the lower you finish, the better odds you're going to have of actually getting the pick you deserve.
Yeah.
So those are two moves that I think, again, make a lot of sense. And if you're going to be crappy this year, maybe be as crappy as you can be, Vancouver.
What's the percent odd of getting win your last now?
They haven't released that yet because they haven't agreed on it yet. But
okay.
it sounds like that's what's happening. They did a report on it last night during the Canucks game, and I was like, okay, that's something to keep an eye on. And I guess kind of moving off of that, did you happen to see the offside goal in the Carolina Columbus game?
I admittedly did not watch it, but I read a ton about this.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, I would be super pissed off if I was Columbus, right?
Yeah, I mean, days after I read that there is a rule in the rule book that's like after play is resumed, you cannot add or remove a goal from the scoreboard. So
for sure.
I get that they were in a tough spot, and all they could do was, take away 45 seconds of power play time. It still made them look super shitty, but
see, I guess the thing is for me is like no one had ever taken away a power play before either.
Right.
So, like they chose to do that, but they didn't choose to do the other part. And I don't know, like what would have happened if Carolina had scored on that power play before the half.
Right.
So I think it's interesting. It's interesting precedent that's now been set for the NHL. I doubt that will ever come up again. It was a very unique situation. And then the other story out of that game was what everyone I think has expected to happen has happened, and Patrick Laine got benched by Tortorella, which comes back to the discussion of that trade, right? Like, if they can't convince Laine to stay, then Winnipeg by default is going to win that trade. But I still think like this is the last year of Tortorella's deal, and I really think like if you're going to choose between Torts and Laine at some point, or Torts and the players, you're going to have to choose your players. If he's really the reason why all these people have wanted out, even though I know there's lots of other reasons. But, Laine scored like 3 goals in 4 games for Columbus since coming over. He's done what he needs to do. And evidently he like mouthed off to the assistant coach or something. And that's why Torts benched him.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's an interesting situation to watch, that one down there for sure. And Roslovic looks really good since coming over to Columbus.
Yeah, he's getting that opportunity he wanted, that's for sure. I think I read somewhere that something along the lines that was like nonchalantly like everybody already knows that Laine wants to play for the Kings or something like that. And I was like, that's weird. If everyone knew that, I'm pretty out of the loop, I guess. I thought I read things, but that was the first time I'd seen that. And I thought that was weird, but I did mention to you before when we were discussing the trade and the winners and losers or whatever it is, that I was, I joked, I'm like, he's already signed an offer sheet with the Rangers or whatever I said, right? I could totally just see him being the type of player that like, I'll go out there and score my goals, but at the end of the year, like,
I'm out.
I'm gonna go do my thing where I want to go.
Yep.
He just seems like that type of.
Yep, and that was the risk, right, in this trade for Columbus. I think, I think it's pretty evident that is what he wants, and it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Do you think there's any chance they flip him at the deadline?
I doubt they flip him at the deadline unless Columbus is super out of it or something, which I don't think they will be. But yeah, like Torch seems like, it doesn't seem, I think we know he's the kind of coach that probably is going to run out of time at some point here. His message is going to start getting a little bit dry. And he does get a lot out of his players, I think, everywhere he's gone, except for maybe Vancouver, which was just a disaster for both sides. But he's revamped his image. He's done what he's wanted to do in Columbus. I just wonder if I doubt that Torts is back next season for Columbus more than I doubt Laine's back.
Okay.
I guess that's the thing I'm betting on right now. Anyway, that's my Columbus corner. But
But
I do
let's
have,
not
like-
make that a thing. I mentioned how much I hate Columbus and their dumb cannon.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan, although I will say I'm more interested in watching their games now.
Because you have players in the pool.
Yeah, I don't have any players in the pool there, but
Don't you have Merzlikins?
oh yeah, I do. But he was hurt. Now he's back, which is good.
There you
But
go.
kind
No
of going
comments.
into the pool a little bit. One of the other players that I selected that has not had a good start is Lafreniere.
Yeah, I've noticed.
Like, it's almost shocking how bad he's played.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it might be that he basically missed like a full year of hockey because of the pandemic. And I think for those younger players, that probably matters more than for the vets, just in terms of development time and all that. But it's like, again, I wonder if they're going to send him to the AHL once that league starts playing.
Yeah, interesting.
Because he's just like not gotten, well, he's gotten one goal, but he's not getting chances or anything from what I've heard. I haven't watched a ton of Rangers games, but
Well, I know who your ad drop is going to be.
I know. Well, you know what? I was debating back and forth between Merzlikins and Lafreniere because I was like, I feel like there's other goalies out there who are going to get me more points, but I also think there's going to be some other people that are going to be dropping goalies. So, yeah, exactly. So, got to see who's there, but it's probably going to be Lafreniere, but maybe he turns it on here and
You never know. He could pull a Stamkos on you. I remember his rookie season, the first half of the season. I mean, that was a coaching change too that changed things for him. But he was like non-existent the first half, and the second half he went off.
Yeah, it could work out. I'm not holding my breath. I need, yeah. And then I have one more point. It's about the Canadian division and specifically two teams, not the Canucks. I know, surprising. So the first one is Montreal because, first, like, they haven't had a good week. They lost both to Edmonton and then Toronto, right? And it kind of brings up an interesting point, I guess, about how good Montreal is because they've got a good record. They're second in the league. So they're 8-4-2 right now. I wrote it down. But if you take away the wins against the Canucks, they're basically at 500. They're 4-4-1. And I think they're an interesting team to watch because I'm not convinced. I guess, like, again, they looked really good against playing the Canucks, and I think they've got good depth, but I still wonder about them as a team. And then kind of on a flip side, I think that Winnipeg, who has been playing very well and basically has played the whole season without either Laine or Dubois, and now they're getting Dubois into their lineup, right? He's played a couple of games, but I think they're gonna rise up here.
I do too. I think, like we talked about after Dubois went to Winnipeg, that now that they've got those three centermen that they got, Stastny and Dubois and Scheifele, like they went from a decent team to having like a really solid top nine. And over to Montreal, like I picked them to finish first. I'm going to stick with that. I think they're deep enough to pull it off. But Carey Price hasn't really been his best yet, and I think he might get into form, or maybe not. But I mean, it was all due to come down to earth, right? They were playing so well, and you got Jeff Petrie. Like, I don't even want to talk about Jeff Petrie right now. But
okay, how much do you want to bet that Jeff Petrie is not, like, he's not going to continue this scoring?
That's what I'm saying. It's all going to come back down to earth. There's no way.
Yeah.
So it was all going too well. There's other things too. Josh Anderson, don't get me started. 9 goals or whatever after 0-21 last year. Again,
he was exactly the player they needed.
Yeah. Okay. So things are going to come back down to earth for Montreal. I think, the goaltending, Allen's been good, and Price, I think, will get better. So I think the goaltending and their defense is good enough to keep them up where they are in the standings. And I think they'll be able to compete over the whole length of the season because we're still only a month in, like exactly a month in. And normally, like, if you think about it, when they play the beginning of October to the beginning of November, it's, the stats are crazy, kind of like we're seeing with Draisaitl and McDavid. And sorry about that. And I think everything's going to kind of settle out and normalize too. So the condensed schedule, I think, is the biggest thing screwing Vancouver. But I think now that everything will start to settle, we'll start to see the normal trends and everything like that. I'm kind of rambling on the same thing over and over, but things will start to change and seem more like everyone would have thought, I think, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the thing with Montreal is I think their goaltending is going to get better, but what I'm afraid for them right now is their scoring, which is kind of echoing what you were saying. I just don't think they're generating enough chances, and I still think they've got a lot of pressure on those two young centers in Suzuki and Kotkaniemi. And Suzuki, again, was one of those players that started really well, but I don't know how much more he's going to be able to give, essentially. So we'll see. But the other kind of team, I guess, in that conversation is the team the Canucks are playing now this week, because they haven't played Ottawa yet. So they're a team that if they run this against Vancouver and then they win their games against Ottawa, is going to be right up there in the conversation again. But really hoping that Vancouver, gets some sort of result against Calgary, because I just mentally don't think I can handle it.
I didn't think Calgary looked that good last night, especially the first two periods. I didn't think they looked too good. I mean, their two goals they got were just as the power play were ending, and they were kind of fluky off the defense end, Demko didn't have a chance, really, and I thought the Canucks outplayed them really well in the first period, and they continued to do so in the second. And like you said, the resilience and the comeback ability of this team, being the Canucks, just, non-existent. So all it takes is a couple bad goals and they're kind of down and out or whatever, which is the worst part of everything right now. But I didn't think Calgary was that great. I think Markstrom did the Markstrom thing, and he didn't have that many super good scoring chances against him, but he was there. And I think, I don't think Calgary's as good as they seem.
I don't know. I guess I think Markstrom can do Markstrom things is kind of what it comes down to. And their defense is decent. They got a good defense. The other thing just in general about the Canadian division that's so wacky is and part of this is I know because they haven't had any of their games canceled, right? Whereas all the other divisions have. But right now, in terms of leaders for goals in the season, the top 8 are all from Canadian teams.
Really?
Yeah. Not points, but goals. It's Toffoli and
Anderson,
Matthews,
Besser.
Besser and all those guys, and it goes down to 8. That's all in Canada, but your boys had some games canceled this week.
Yeah.
It's too bad.
Yeah. I just hope they're able to make them all up and they don't go off points percentage at the end.
Yeah, it's going to be really fascinating to see what happens. The kind of, I guess, good news about the American teams is because the vaccination rate in the US has been so high, I kind of think in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks, the players are going to get their vaccines. So it might not be that much of a problem for that much longer for the NHL, which would be nice, but we'll see what happens there. And Canada's still doing okay, but knock on wood, there was a little bit of a scare with Edmonton the other day. So,
knock on wood, like you say. I don't want to miss any more hockey,
No, it's not fun, and it would be nice, for everyone to play those 56 games, but I'm sure it's not going to happen.
Yeah, time will tell. Time will tell. I hope they make it all up. I think they'll make it work, but we'll see.
Okay.
I've got nothing more. You got nothing more?
I think that's everything for me. That's my weekly rant about the Canucks. And okay, I got one more thing. Next week, when we have this conversation, is there new management for the Canucks?
They play all 3 remaining games against Calgary?
Yes.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say they're going to win the next 2 and then lose the third one.
Okay.
and end up going 2-2, and that'll buy them some time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think if they haven't done it now, I don't understand when they're going to do it, and it'll probably be the off season then, right? So, I don't know. I'm going to be optimistic though, and I'm going to say yes because I just can't keep living this way. It's too sad.
Well, I just can't see the Aquilinis wanting to pay for 2 general managers when they're losing money like this, you know?
I know. It sucks. It really sucks because it's so okay. Okay, I can keep going, but I guess this is just my one last point. If you keep Benning with the expiring contracts that you have on this team for this trade deadline, and the Canucks continue in some sort of direction that's similar to this one, do you let Benning say like trade Pearson and let's say Sutter with retained salary for assets if you're gonna fire him in the offseason?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see the harm in trading rentals, I guess. Pearson's a very interesting one because I feel like Canucks fans kind of undervalue what he's brought to the team. He has, since joining the Canucks, he has the most goals of any player in that time span. And he's fit nicely with this team, which I don't think he has with, like, well, I mean, in LA, he was good at the beginning, but Pittsburgh was a disaster. And I think that he's been solid, but I also understand if they move on from him, again, there's younger players that are coming up that are going to want those spots. But you have to be careful that you don't become the Edmonton Oilers where you're just giving those young guys those opportunities, right? So,
Yeah, and that's why I kind of hesitated with my when I said I would trade those guys at the deadline, because I was hesitating on how badly do you want to trade away more of the room after losing so much of the room already this offseason, right?
That's another excellent point.
So that's why I kind of was like, like I would like to get rid of Sutter. I like that idea. I think I think we could probably fill got it back to center and put McEwen or something, and we'd get by, But I think, like you said, Pearson brings more to the team as well. I think he's probably not a leader in the room, but maybe like a glue guy,
Yep. And yeah, he just seems to work. Like with the Canucks, he works. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing them keep him for a couple seasons if the dollars are low. I think it could work long term with them. Not necessarily long term, but you know what I mean, in the future.
Yeah.
But I'll be interested to see. You don't want them to walk for nothing again, I guess is the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's very dependent, like you say, on how things go leading from here to the deadline.
Okay, sweet. Well, that's it for me. I won't bring up any more Canuck problems that I made up in my head.
Well, that's okay. We got some stuff out. We got some words out. And there'll be, 3 more Canucks games between now and next Friday?
At least 3, right?
At least 3. So we'll, I say it seems like we tend to do this Friday evening thing. So tentatively, We'll have a few more games to talk about. You're hoping some new management to talk about. And we'll see how it goes from here.
I'd be happy with that, yeah.
Alrighty, well, signing off from Keith and Laura on Salt Spring, another Hockey Talk on the Rock. Thanks for listening. Woo!